for coming out tonight.
So, we have Mr. Charlamagne Tha God, and if you guys, we have a podcast called Meeting You Where You Are, and it's our, it's where we're able to come talk and discuss mental health, so people can tune in, not only just if you receive services, but just to be a part of the conversation and hear things that's happening. And one of the part of the conversations that we have, a part of our podcast, is called On the Sofa. So we have Charlamagne on the sofa right now so that we can begin to have this conversation.
I like it. Feel like therapy.
So speaking of, man, so you have been on the road all around. We've been, so to fill you in, we wanted to have this in November, but Charlamagne has had a very, very, very aggressive tour schedule. So we were able to land on today and finally put this together. But without me telling you about the tour schedule, take a look at this right here.
Peace to the planet. I go by the name of Charlamagne Tha God.
Charlamagne Tha God.
Charlamagne Tha God.
Yo, what's happening?
Congratulations on your new book.
Yes, Shook One, Anxiety Playing Tricks on Me.
Good.
My second book, Shook One, Anxiety Playing Tricks on Me.
With his second book, Shook One, the anxiety's playing tricks on me.
With the book Shook One, it's me now.
Yeah.
At 40, father of 3. When you're the go-to person, for a lot of people, it's like, who does the go-to person go to? I was sitting on vacation, and I was like at the pool, and I was looking at like all my family at the pool, and I just had this sense of peace. So I was like, yo, I want to feel this all the time. Peace to the planet.
Pretty aggressive schedule, right? Every day he was leaving the radio station, going here, going there, going there, going there.
I look at that and I'm like, how, if you've already been diagnosed with anxiety, and I saw how the VIP room was with so many people and so much traveling, how do you manage that?
I mean, you know, I use this acronym called for fear that my homegirl Kay Fox gave me, and she said fear is an acronym for face everything and rise, or fear everything and run. And you know, I be feeling like I don't have any other choice, because like I don't have a plan B. So you know, it's either like I'm gonna shrink in certain moments, or I'm gonna rise in certain moments, and I choose to rise. And when I do want to shrink, I will shrink, meaning I'll stay home and you know, like just keep to myself.
Well, we thank you for not doing that tonight.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I mean, this is actually this is fun. Like it's interesting because even with this book, like I didn't intend to write a second book. Like I just was like keeping, you know, pages in my journal. But it's like now that the book is out, I realize that I'm still uncomfortable having these conversations. But it doesn't bother me because I know that if I'm feeling uncomfortable, I know I'm growing.
That's great, that's great. So I want to talk to you about the book. So just to preface the conversation, so we're going to have, there's a conversation that's going to be broken down into 4 different categories. We're going to talk about the book, then we're going to talk about some stigma, we're going to talk about some diagnoses, then we're going to talk about clinical interventions. So from the book, you were, as I stated before, you were a New York Times bestseller, on the top of the charts for like 7 or 7 weeks or whatever. You're packing places out. I mean, I haven't seen bookstores this packed. You know, I think you said it's almost comparable to Yeezys. People lining up for Yeezys and Jordans.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's a Morgan's reference for the people, the students up top. I didn't go to the bookstore this much, but to return my books for resale. So with that being, having that much success for your first book, did you feel the pressure to follow up with this book and pressure to live up to that success of the first one?
No, not at all. Because you know the thing is, when you come out with a successful book, you know the first time, you know your book agents and your book publishers are like, oh, when are we gonna get another one? And you know you can get this amount of money for your second book. And I don't do things for money. You know I do things when I feel like doing them, and I do things that have purpose. You know, if it doesn't serve a purpose, if the only purpose is I'm getting a check, I'm getting some paper, then I don't want to do it. And you know, this book came from a real place. You know, like I said in the video, it came from me actually being on vacation and having this moment of just like peace, just like real serenity, like no worry, no anxiety. And I was like, how can I feel like this all the time? And you know, my wife was just like, yo, you need to go to therapy. Like, go to therapy, figure it out. And that's what I started doing. So when I was in therapy, I was unpacking all this stuff, and I just was, you know, keeping notes of it, keeping it in my journal. And so it turned into a lot of these pages that are in this book. And, you know, my book agent was like, you know, you get with Dr. Ish Major, who does all the clinical correlations in the book. Because what I was trying to do, I was trying to, you know, take what my therapist was telling me and then transcribe it in my book. But that wasn't coming out right. Like all my therapist was allowing me to do was helping me to explain what I was feeling better. So I was able to explain what I was feeling, and then Dr. Ish came in and he gave the expert medical opinion.
So I read the audio. So I bought all the book. There's a picture that you saw, but I didn't read the book. I actually had to listen because I have a very busy schedule as well. So I popped on the audiobook. So it was Dr. Ish did a very good job in summation, and it was a good audiobook, by the way.
Thank you very much. I won Audible Book of the Year with Black Privilege too, by the way.
Oh, nice.
So hopefully I'll do that with Shook.
It was so enjoyable to read. I mean, I read books about mental illness all the time, as you can imagine. But I found myself laughing out loud at the book and also getting pumped. As you can see, I love music. And I love music from a particular era, too. I'm like a late 90s, early 2000s kind of person. Okay. So, like, I'm looking at it and I'm like, what? He said, only built for Cuban links? And I'm like, I remember my sister bought me that CD, because that's how, I don't want to date myself, but she bought me that CD for my birthday. And Shook Ones, I had to, you had to bring music to high school for your music class. And I brought that as one of my music pieces that I really wanted to listen to and talk about and discuss. And it moved me. And so how did you decide that, for people who didn't read the book, how did you decide that was the title for your book?
One of my mottos is live your truth, so nobody can use your truth against you. Mm-hmm. So it's just like whatever you're feeling, whatever you are, like you should just embrace it, And like for me, the term shook one, growing up, that wasn't a good term. Like, if you were considered shook, then you'd be considered, food out here in the streets. You know what I'm saying? Like people look at you being shook as weakness. They look at you being shook as vulnerable. They'll take advantage of that, in certain environments. So for me, I was just like, nah, I am a shook one. Like it's been plenty of times, past, present, and probably in the future where I have been shook. And I'm just telling people, like, it's okay to be shook. And that's why the subtitle is Anxiety Playing Tricks on Me, because that's based off the Ghetto Boys. Yeah. My mind playing tricks on me. Because if you listen to that song now, Willie D, Scarface, Bushwick Bill, all they were talking about in that song was anxiety. Even down to Bushwick Bill hallucinating at the end of the song.
When you put that as when the book starts off, you were talking about your dad sleeping with the gun or whatever.
Yeah.
So I greatly enjoyed the way it was where you started the book off with that music reference, and I was like, man, I never actually listened to the song and collected the dots that this was some anxiety that we're going on, because we normalize it in our communities, and it's like, hey, this is just a part of it. But before we go there, I really do appreciate the way that you would be able to be vulnerable about what it is that you feel in the book and about breaking the stigma. So I want to talk to you a little bit about the stigma, but before we go there, we want to set the tone with this one.
But why do you think it's such a stigma surrounding mental health in the black community?
Well, I think
negative stigma.
I think that nobody wants to be considered crazy.
Honestly, also, I just think that it's not really cool yet for black people to admit that we have a problem, because again, we associate that with weakness.
Distrust of the system, right? Whether that's the medical field, whether that's Department of Social Services, whether that's judicial system. Black folks aren't customary to going to those institutions and talking to folks.
Can I just say I'm proud of you?
Thank you.
I really am, because brothers have it the hardest, and it's so incredible to see how you have put the shame away, and you've stepped up. You're a soldier, and I love you for it. I really do.
We're damaged people, and we got to go work on that damage.
Talk about it.
That's crazy. You know what's crazy about that video? The guy, I can't remember the brother's name. They from Charlotte though, but when he was on the Breakfast Club, that was like 2 years ago. And I was like, that was me flirting with the idea of therapy, like knowing I needed some help, but like still feeling like, nah, I don't want to go to therapy yet. So like when I'm talking to him, like I'm really asking those questions, for the people, of course, but those are real. I was really asking those questions for me.
Yeah. Because sometimes you got to put your foot in the water before you just jump.
Absolutely. I was flirting with the idea of therapy for a while, like way before I even started going.
That's called pre-contemplation. Just people. Sometimes you think about it for a long time before you decide to do it. But I was just kind of floored with and just really impressed with you for even writing this book, because there's so many stigmas. We know that there's a stigma in the African American community about mental health services and receiving mental health services. But on top of that, you're black, you're a male, you grew up Jehovah's Witness, and you're part of the hip hop culture. And so for all of the things
That's
that you were saying
right there.
before, that's 4. So you've got 4 reasons to avoid therapy. But you took the bull by the horns and you decided to do it anyway. And not just that, but also then to share it with everybody else and normalize it. What gave you the bravery to even attempt to be that vulnerable?
I honestly didn't even look at it as bravery. Like to me, it's like, it's not that I didn't think people were hiding their therapy, which I have come to learn that yes, people have been hiding their therapy, even people in my family. But I just thought that we just didn't have access to those resources. We didn't know anything about therapy growing up. Like, only time I saw therapy on TV was like Frasier, or when Tony Childs used to go on Girlfriends. Like, I didn't know what therapy was. Like, the guidance counselor never really had a real conversation with me growing up. So for me, it was just a matter of lack of resources and nobody giving me the tools, you know? But then you come to find out, you know, I've come to find out since writing my book, my mom was going to therapy back in 1998 when her and my father got a divorce. Thanksgiving weekend, 2 weekends ago, I'm home in Moncks Corner, South Carolina. My cousin, I had a younger cousin, he's 26 years old, he killed himself. It was the 4th time he had attempted to kill himself. He slit his wrist, he took pills, shot himself in the stomach like 8-9 months ago, and this time he shot himself in the head, right? And so my father, you know, my little cousin used to always go talk to my father every day, right? My father would try to talk to him, you know, try to get his spirits up. And so when that happened, between that situation and my father reading my book, my father was like, you know, man, I've been reading your book, and he was like, you know, I tried to kill myself like 30 years ago. And he was like, you know, the only reason I didn't kill myself is because I saw a picture of you and your mom and your sister, so I decided not to do it. And then he was like, you know, he was going to therapy 2 and 3 times a week. And he's been on 10 to 12 different medications his whole life. You know, and I'm like, you ain't tell nobody? Like, you just keeping that information to yourself? Like, that's a big secret to not say to nobody. Like, my mom never knew. And I mean,
that's because we've learned to think about therapy as or mental health from a deficit, you know? Like, it's an issue, it's something wrong with you. I know when I was speaking to some of the kids at DSS, it's like, nobody ever thinks about it. It's like, hey, you know, we suffer in silence because we don't want to come out and talk about it. And everyone around us are dealing with these same things, so it doesn't seem like anything is abnormal.
But if my father would have told me that back in the day, or my mom would have told me she was in therapy back in the day, then I would have known that there's tools and there's resources out here that can help me get through. Absolutely.
But the problem is that a lot of people, so your mom and them, they were proactive with the therapy, just didn't share the interventions. But a lot of people in our community, they don't think that they don't think about mental health. Well, when we talk about mental health, they think that mental health is like wearing a straitjacket, walking down a white hall, or having auditory hallucinations. But literally, I always explain it this way, like when I'm on the radio and stuff, is that, you know, if you ever had your heart broken, if you ever been in a relationship, you had your heart broken, you know, or someone passed, or that was close to you, or not even just someone that you know passed, or you suffered some type of loss. There are stages that we used to go to for grief and loss, but nobody actually does it. We just normalize it and keep moving. Or if you had like a letdown, you were expecting something, you were excited for this, and it didn't work out your way. You were let down, you were hurt. We need to be able to, we don't think to process these things, but if we break our hand, if we break our finger, if we start bleeding, when we see blood, then we go to the hospital, you know? We have no problem going to the hospital, but when it comes to mental health, we deal with more emotional stuff every day than we deal with physical. I don't want to say it like, you know, obviously we walk and we use our muscles and stuff like that, but the hurt, we deal with, we're more exposed to a potential for emotional and mental health issues and damage daily, but nobody ever thinks about it that way.
I think, you know, black people, we've been taught that pain is a part of the process. Like pain is a part of our plan. Like we think about everything that our ancestors went through, and we just think that pain is a part of life, but it's not. You know, sometimes when you transcend your circumstances and you on the outside looking in, you realize that a lot of things we normalized are not normal at all.
Exactly. Like I always say, the myth of the strong black woman. I am not your pack mule.
That's a fact.
You're not gonna put everything on me.
That's a fact. I mean, I talk about that in the book, and I, you know, even just with my wife, I've been with my girl for 20 years. You know, we only been married for 4. Don't judge me. But we've been together 20 years, you know, and then after a while, like when she started telling me like, you need to go to therapy, you need to go to therapy, you know, I didn't even realize I was dumping all my baggage on her. Like, you know, not even thinking about what she may be going through, or, you know, things that she may need to unpack, you know what I mean? And that's how I really feel. I feel like that's selfish in a way, to just think that, you know, I can just dump all my problems on her all the time, and like, and we got 3 kids to raise, and you know, and she still wants to have a life of her own. Like, it's like, that's a lot for her, and that's one of the reasons I started going to therapy, because I'm just like, yo, I don't want to be selfish. Like we know black women are strong, but you know that don't mean we got to give them the whole load to carry, because we are doing that sometimes and don't even realize it.
Amen.
Yeah, so that's how I go to therapy as well for relationship counseling and stuff like that. But in grad school, they said before you can practice and be a therapist, you also have to first sit in the seat of a client. So I had to go to therapy for that. But a lot of the most effective stuff that I've learned through therapy is about being hurt, being vulnerable, understanding the traumatic experiences that we've witnessed that we don't even know, and then we're lashing out in maladaptive ways, you know, but because we don't know, we haven't properly spoken to anyone about it. But what I found, while my marriage counseling and all that other stuff and my mental health therapy is very good, what I found that is one of the significant things that we deal with in the urban community is trauma, right? So I want to go talk a little bit about that. I want to talk about trauma and anxiety. So we do know, just as you have become or been ordained the ambassador for mental health and breaking the stigma.
Don't do that to me.
I didn't do it. That's what they're saying. I'm just a messenger. But Meek Mill recently they've been ordained the person for prison reform, right?
Meek said he don't want that either. We had Meek on Breakfast Club this week. Meek said if they tell him to stop, he gonna stop.
We need you to keep going, though. But as Meek has become that person, the face of prison reform, he's in his album and a lot of his interviews, he's spoken a lot about being in the system, being abused by the police, being trapped in the system, and not being able to get out of the criminal justice system, and it's continued to plague him. While we do know that a lot of the trauma some of the trauma and abuse that we can experience can happen in our homes, a lot of the stuff happens in the community by people that are responsible for protecting us, that are also abusing us. And I want to get to your chapter on Black and White, but first I want to cut to this so we can set the tone for that.
911, do you need police, fire, medical?
Maybe both, I'm not sure. There's just someone screaming outside.
Okay, what's the address that they're near? Okay, and is it a male or female?
It sounds like a male.
Okay, and you don't know why?
I don't know why. I think they're yelling help, but I don't know.
3 weeks ago, Trayvon Martin, an unarmed black teenager, was shot down by a white neighborhood watchman who claimed self-defense.
I have to tell you, I do have a firearm on me. Don't reach for it, then. Don't pull it out. Don't pull it out. You just killed my boy. Don't pull it out. Go on.
As far as how this 25-year-old suspect, Freddie Gray, broke his neck after Baltimore police arrested him.
Gunshots, and a 22-year-old black man, John Crawford, lay dying on the floor of a Walmart.
I think that the response by law enforcement is failing the black community. So I understand that until we have a real response and a real conversation about this is going to happen again.
The police the same way. They put their club upside your head and then turn around and accuse you of attacking them. Every case of police brutality against a Negro follows the same pattern. They attack you, bust you all upside your mouth, and then take you to court and charge you with assault. What kind of democracy is that?
Blame, yes. I think there's blame on both sides. You look at both sides. I think there's blame on both sides, but you also had people that were very fine people on both sides.
Oh, Lord.
Those are some very graphical images, man, and it's disheartening to see this. You know, we have we have Freddie Gray, we have Sandra Bland, we have Eric Gardner being abused by the police. Then we have a president that incites this stuff, you know, and doesn't call it out and exacerbates it. In your book, you have a chapter called Black and White, and you talk about the fear of the police, you know, being pulled over and all the thoughts and anxious thoughts that go to through your mind, through, you know, trauma that you experience and then also secondary trauma. So I would like for you to share some more of your thoughts about, you know, the PTSD and the trauma surrounded around police and the civil rights movement and all that other stuff.
Well, yeah, I mean, the chapter is called Black and White, and it's just about being black and paranoid in America, because I feel like it's a whole nother level of anxiety that black people have to deal with, and, you know, a lot of that plays a role in it, you know what I mean? I think that it's a lot of social engineering going on as well. Like, you know, why do we got to keep seeing those images over and over? That's why a lot of times I don't choose to share it on my social media because we know the problems, we know the issues. So it's almost like we're just passing around the trauma, you know.
Being conditioned.
And like for me, anxiety is so dangerous for me because I truly believe your thoughts become things. And you know, the things that I want to happen in my life, I constantly think about. The things that I don't want to happen in my life, I try not to think about at all. But when I got that on my mind, you know, I think that I can manifest that negativity. I can manifest those negative thoughts just by holding on to them. Like, you know, you driving and, you know, you got your 10-year-old daughter in the passenger seat, you got your 3-year-old in the back seat, and, you know, the police get behind you at night, like 6, 7 o'clock, and you think, I'm like, this literally happened, and I'm sitting there thinking, like, in a matter of seconds, I'm like, what would happen if the police pull us over? Because I know when I get pulled over, you know, one guy walks up to this side, and then another car comes, and then the other police officer will walk up to this side. What if my, you know, daughter's in the back with a rattle or something, or, you know, a tablet? Like, you know, like, all of those thoughts go into my mind. You know what I'm saying? What would I do if I was ever in a situation like that where a police officer pulled a gun on me while I'm in the car with my daughters? Like literally those thoughts always race through my mind. And I don't think when white people are driving, they have those same issues. I think when police get behind them, they're thinking about regular things like, you know, literally if a white person gets pulled over, they ask the officer, what are you pulling me over for, officer? I don't have that luxury. You know what I'm saying? My luxury is keeping my hands on the steering wheel, and when he asked me for my license and registration, I'm like, are you sure I can reach for my license and registration?
Yeah.
You know, so I just think it's a whole different, you know, set of circumstances and anxieties that come with just being a black man in America.
So the question is, are you paranoid, or is this just the reality?
I think it's
That's
both.
the struggle.
I think it's both. I think it's a reality, and I think that I have every right to be paranoid. You just show me 6, 7 videos that, and I'm like, and I'm sitting there like, that's exactly why I didn't watch the Sandra Bland documentary on HBO the other night. That's exactly why I didn't watch the Trayvon Martin documentary on BT. I tried.
I tried.
I watched the first episode. I'm like, I'm not doing this to myself. Like, I don't pay for horror movies.
Thank you.
You know what I'm saying?
I felt the same way.
People to scare me. Like, I'm not it's not entertaining to me. I'm not intrigued by this. You know?
I always feel like that. I feel like, is this really information that's being shared, or is this preparation to get us desensitized to it? Sandra Bland did it for me. I mean, I know a lot of African American men, we discuss that and we prepare with our boys what happens if you encounter the police. So as a woman, I always felt like there was a certain degree of safety that I would have. But after Sandra Bland, I too, you know, the police pull up behind me and I'm like, Lord, let this not be the day.
Yeah, it's little images. Like right now I'm sitting there thinking about that movie Crash back in the day. Remember Crash? And when they had Terrence Howard and I think Paula Patton was his wife in that movie.
Thandie Newton.
And it's like, what would you do in that situation? Like, you're asking too much of me as a man. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're really asking too much, because I feel like a man's job is to protect and provide. You know what I'm saying? And you gonna just sit there and violate my woman like that in front of me? I just don't know. I don't ever want to be in a situation like that, because I'm gonna have to die, to be totally honest with you.
It's very difficult because it's not even just traffic stops anymore. You can literally be in a store or a bar.
Your own home.
Or in your own home. And somebody could get the wrong apartment and come in and hurt you. You know, or you could be trying to be a protector and save people during a shooting, and then you get shot. So it's not even just the police stops anymore. It's almost just anywhere you go, you could be you know, what did they say is that, about the Fifth Amendment to carrying weapons only applies for everyone else. It doesn't apply for African Americans, because even as an African American carrying a gun to be protecting yourself, you're still their target.
Yeah, and they always, you know, they say the police, you know, killings don't happen as much as they show us, right? But like, all I need to see is one. You know what I'm saying? Like that's the same thing that makes me feel like I can be successful. All I gotta do is see one person do it. So if I see something bad happen to one person, why wouldn't I think it could happen to me?
But you know what? The same thing, it can be said for what you're doing right now. All people need to see is one person who's willing to step out here and say, this is what I'm going through, this is what I'm dealing with. And as you being on a national platform, it encourages other people. We work in the heart of Baltimore City, and so we work with young males, young females all the time who live in Baltimore City and don't know that mental health and mental illness and getting treatment for mental illness is an option, or even how to recognize it. So thank you for being that one.
So to help others, because I know for me, I get
I just love the way Baltimore say the U's.
Oh, my ears so long.
I love listening to Just Hilarious talk. Like, I just love the way y'all pronounce.
See, I thought I had it in check. I did.
Wait till we bring out the dogs and the T's. But I know for me, right, we probably have some people in the audience that is probably thinking like, hey, you know what? Now that you put it that way, you know, maybe it is something wrong. Maybe it's something I could need to think about. I never thought about it that way. I know. So I have a question for you. I know for me, I can get anxious at times. When I get overwhelmed, things just begin, like small tasks just begin to seem very big. And one of my biggest things that bring me slight anxiety is when I'm out of control of a situation. So when I'm flying on an airplane or something like that, and I didn't realize, and that's the thing, I dealt with it for all these years and didn't realize that maybe I am suffering from anxiety in some capacity, because if I can't put my hand on the steering wheel, I feel very vulnerable. I feel like I'm in someone else's control, you know. So when that plane hits turbulence, I'm freaking out. I'm grabbing the seat in front of me. I'm reaching under for anything, or I'm waiting for the thing to drop down. So, and I know that's me, you know. And I have a mental health organization, so I'm able to think about this and process for myself. But there are others who haven't been able to, or who don't know that some of the things that they're struggling with may be similar, or may be some diagnostic criteria. So for you, what was one of the most anxious moments that you've had? One of the most anxious moments, and what are some of the things that you deal with on a daily basis that others may benefit from and say, hey, you know what, I deal with that?
Well, my biggest issue, and that's interesting. You talk about control, because you know they always teach you like your serenity prayer growing up. You know, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And one of the biggest issues that I deal with that give me the ultimate anxiety is my kids. You know what I'm saying? I have a chapter called parental paranoia, because you know my daughter's 10 now. She's in 5th grade. She goes to school every day. She's got cheerleading practice. You know, she's got gymnastics. She wants to go to friends' houses and hang out. And it's like I got so many different thoughts that go through my mind when it comes to my kids. And
especially when your neighbors get mad at you, right?
Yeah, and I realize like I'm not in control of any of that. And you know, my therapist and everybody keeps telling me, and like just you know, people, they're like, yo, your kids are yours, but they're not really yours, meaning that they still have to live their lives and they have to go out into the world. And I'm like, I'm not ready to relinquish that control yet, you know. So that's one of the biggest things that gives me crazy anxiety, because I'm just like, I'm watching my daughters grow up and have minds of their own and wanting to do things. And like, I think also too for me, like when I was 8 years old, I was, you know, getting touched on by my cousin's ex-wife, you know. So it's like, for me, I'm constantly thinking about that when it comes to my daughter, because I never told anybody. I didn't tell nobody that until I got in my 30s, you know, and that's because I was watching Tyler Perry on Oprah crying about being touched by a woman in his family. And I'm like, what's the hell's wrong with him? And then, but then I had to stop and think, well, what's wrong with me? You know, and then you start having conversations with other people, you know, men and women. Everybody got these stories of getting touched on when they was younger. And so that's what I constantly think about when it comes to my daughter. So,
I'll fill you in. You're not the only person that feels that way. Jada was at my house the other day for my daughter's birthday party, and my wife was telling her son, come on, we can go out and we're going to leave. And her son said, no. My mommy said, I can't go anywhere without her. So Jada has trained her kids that you're not going anywhere without me.
I used to work in Child Protective Services. I don't know what to tell you, you know?
So you got all of those stories in your head that you've heard.
Oh, no, I had secondary PTSD.
Yeah.
I'll share this, when I had my first baby, if I was too exhausted and my husband would get up in the middle of the night, I would jump up. What you doing to my baby? This is the nicest man you ever met in your life. But you hear so many horror stories. How can you not?
Absolutely.
You know?
I mean, it's the same thing. Like thank you. I got so many homegirls who tell me stories about things that happened to them when they was younger. Plus, I got my own experiences when I was young. So it's just like, I'm not letting my daughter just go kick it at somebody's house. You know what I'm saying? Like, not at all. Like, and then you think about things like school shootings, you know, like that goes through your mind. Like, anything I see happen to somebody, it plays in my mind, and I got to dismiss those thoughts immediately.
Because you're ruminating on those thoughts.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so it's not just a passing thought, how someone else would have a passing thought and prepare. For you, it's a
And it's
continuous
every day. Because you go to school Monday through Friday.
Yeah.
Like the only peace that I have sometimes is on weekends when I know where everybody is at.
Yeah.
You know, that's why when I got the idea to even write this book, I was on vacation with my whole family and, you know, my friends. And like I knew where everybody was at. Everybody I loved and cared about, I'm looking at them in this moment. So for that split second, I had a moment of peace. And I'm like, oh, we can't be on vacation forever.
And add to that, I'm sorry.
No, I'm saying we can't be on vacation forever, so I just got to figure out a way to like feel this way when I'm not on vacation.
So,
no, add to that what you were talking about, people having these experiences and hearing about other people's experience. In your book, I loved it. You wrote a chapter about epigenetics and the study of how, for people who don't know, there was a study done with Holocaust survivors that their experience, the DNA from the trauma of the Holocaust literally changed their DNA, so they were more likely to pass on anxiety and depression in their descendants who never experienced the Holocaust. And with us, we are the descendants of chattel slavery. So for 400 years. So what have we been passed down?
Yeah, but they don't do those studies on us.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, they don't want us to. They don't want us to know that it is something systemic that they actually caused to us. You know, that's all that is.
So we're going to begin to start heading into our last chapter. So I want to make sure that everybody is DMing your questions to BTST Services, Instagram, DM. We're going to go to our medical director in just a few seconds so that we can get some of your questions and have her chime in from a medical perspective. So we've talked about trauma a little bit. I would love to keep going, but I know we are on tight time. But we talked about trauma. We talked about the stigma. We talked about trauma. We talked a little bit about anxiety. So I don't want to leave on a negative note where, you know, I want to leave optimistic where people know that hope does exist. So I want to be...
This is negative, you know what I'm saying? Like I said before, like I feel like you can't heal what you don't reveal. You know what I mean? I don't think none of this is negative. I feel like sometimes, you know, God has things happen to you so he can work through you.
Most definitely.
I don't feel like none of this is negative.
Wow. No, most definitely. I want to transition and start talking about the healing process more so is what I meant. So I want to talk about the healing process, talk about therapy, what were some of your experiences, and just other clinical interventions. So let's go to a little clip to help us transition.
Life is good, but a lot more pressures come with that. So I just decided to say, you know what, let me finally start going to therapy to get a handle on my anxiety. A lot of people that I saw who were way more successful than me, they always told me how they went to therapy. Why you not go to a therapist?
You weren't taught, in the streets, you weren't taught that that's okay.
And I remember just driving down the highway feeling like I was about to have a heart attack. Yeah, sometimes you might pray and God might tell you to go see a therapist. Yeah.
Oh, you talk like you go to therapy
I
now.
do go to therapy.
I know you do.
It sucks that I'm 40 years old and I'm in therapy, spilling my guts to my therapist about things that have happened to me my whole life. And I'm sitting there like, y'all been walking around with all of this?
That's what a lot of us do. We walk around with a lot of this built up and don't know where to go for it, right? So people that may be thinking about going to therapy that may be open to the idea of therapy now. I want you to speak to them. I want to ask you some questions that may help, that may reach them, and also explore how this thing went for you. So we've been able to break the stigma, right? And I know in one of your books you said that, hey, one of your friends that went to therapy, a lot of people you were saying, hey, they go to therapy. So how did you meet your therapist? What was the criteria when you were searching for a therapist? And what are some of the things that the skills, or what made you close to them and make you feel like this is a good relationship right here?
You know, it's interesting, man. When I first started going to therapy, my thought process was I want an Asian woman therapist. And the reason I wanted an Asian woman therapist is because I wanted somebody that was going to be neutral. Right? Like, didn't have any of the prejudices I may have, you know, didn't have any preconceived notions about anything. Like, I didn't want somebody that was going to reinforce things that I already knew. Like, you know, if I sat down with a black man, a black woman, and I'm talking about, you know, being black and American, you know, the anxiety that comes with being black, like, we share that same experience. You know what I'm saying? So I wanted to just hear what somebody else who just was coming from a neutral position, kind of an unbiased position, had to say. But if you think, you know, trying to find a black therapist is hard, try finding an Asian woman. So that didn't happen. So I ended up sitting down with this Caucasian woman, and I don't even really know how, like, she didn't come from any recommendations. I just was making some calls, and like I just like, you know, I'm gonna go in and sit down with her and see what happens. And I remember like really unloading on her one day, and she looked at me and she went, woo! I was like, that's a lot, right? And she was like, yes, that's a lot. And she just kind of sat there for a second. And I thought that was so dope because it was a real reaction. And it let me know that she was listening with the intent to understand, not just reply. You know, so for me, and I feel like we're teaching each other because there's a lot of things she just didn't know. You know, like, you ever see Boys in the Hood and at the end, you ever seen Boys in the Hood? Boys in the Hood, dope boys, like either they don't know, don't show, or don't give a damn about what's going on in the hood. Yeah. Like sometimes they really just don't know what be going on. True. And it's good to hear that cluelessness sometimes because it lets me know, you're not just turning a blind eye to the evil. You know what I'm saying? Once you make somebody aware of something and they realize how bad something is, then they can start using their privilege to combat some of the prejudice that's going on in the world. So I mean, that's how, you know, I got my relationship with my therapist. But, you know, I love talking to people like Dr. Jessica Clemens, you know, because I feel like I'm ready to be pushed just a little bit more. Yeah. You know, I just didn't want somebody to reinforce my anger to the white man, to be honest.
You know, reading your book was so refreshing for me. I've been a clinician for more years than I like to say to date myself.
Go ahead and let it out.
For a while now. And so I think like a clinician. And I see everything through the lens of a clinician. And so to read your book, it gave me the perspective of a client. And all of the things that you said, first of all, it was good to know that all of that's not falling on deaf ears. And then, you know, to hear the way that you're experiencing therapy and putting it into practice. And I know you said that you journal. What other coping strategies are you using to manage your symptoms now? Because it's not like anxiety, it can go in, it doesn't disappear. It can go into remission. You can learn how to use coping skills to manage it, but it'll be with you. So how are you managing it now?
I think it's easier now because I've shared with people that I experience it. So it's just like, you know, when I go into my little zones nowadays, because I go into my zones, like when, when I'm having like a little panic attack, let me go distance myself for a second. Like, they know, he just in his zone. They're not taking it personal, because that can annoy you too, right? Like, you're just trying to
I just need a moment
for a second.
Yeah,
and you're like, you okay? What's wrong with you? You good? And yo, leave me alone.
I just need a minute.
Even more now.
Yeah.
So I think like that's just talking about it has made it easier because people understand that he's going through his little spell or whatnot. But I think for me also, knowing that other people deal with it, you know, knowing that I'm not the only one, that makes you feel, because that can add to your anxiety when you think you're the only one, because now you feel like a weirdo. You're like, man, everybody else.
You don't feel like you have anyone to share the experience with,
Yeah, everybody else all cool, calm, and collective. I'm the only person in here like...
Talk to a therapist.
When the shooter gonna stand up and start letting all, you know what I'm saying? So it's just like when you know other people are going through it, that helps you. But I think anxiety is like it's like Michael Jordan in the '90s. They used to always say like you can't stop them, you can only hope to contain them. And I think that's how I treat my anxiety. Like I don't. And even when you talk about healing, man, there's no healing when you 39 years old and you start going to therapy. I'm 40 now, but I started going to therapy at 39. Like, it's no healing because now I've pulled the Band-Aid off so many wounds and like all of this stuff I suppressed and, you know, kept inside of me. All of this stuff is coming to the surface, and you know, me and my father, like I thought I loved my father, which I do. But then I'm like, yo, I really hate you for the things that you did to my mom. Yeah. But then I love you because now you're telling me about your experiences, you know, and I'm like, all these years, I'm saying this nigga crazy. He really was alone.
See, for therapy,
you know what I'm saying? It wasn't just drugs. It wasn't alcohol. All of that was self-medicating, you know. So it's just like I would go visit him in rehab, and that's so weird to me. Like, as a kid, your parents have no problem. My dad had no problem with me coming to visit him in rehab, right? Even though they weren't telling me it was rehab, but eventually I figured out it was rehab. But you're not gonna tell me about you going to therapy. You're not gonna tell me about you going to therapy 2 and 3 times a week and like taking medication and your bouts with depression. Like if I'd have known these things early on, I could have probably got a handle on all of this a long time ago.
See, for therapy, for me, it was good. It was very exciting because I know I can always see things through my lens, but being able to go and just be vulnerable and hear things about the way that I do things and see the genetics and see like my genogram and see why I may be doing things certain ways. And I began to develop a lot more empathy for people that I might have thought had malicious ways or that were ill. It's like, you know what? I'm really not that much different, and I understand. It gave me a deeper level of empathy. I'm like, I can understand why you were doing that. You might have been hurt. You've gone through this. This is something that you might have experienced growing up. And growing up in poverty, so I'm not even. It provided me a place to feel like, you know what, it's not that bad. Maybe I just misjudged, and maybe I need to work on that.
Yeah, that's interesting you say too, because like with therapy, I definitely feel like the effects of therapy have made me have more empathy, even with the way I, conduct myself on radio or do interviews now. Like, it was a time I would just attack, but then you realize like people are human beings, and everybody's going.
Absolutely.
Everybody's fighting a battle that you don't know about. And, especially in that entertainment world, like, things can be very, very overwhelming, especially with social media. Like, people get bombarded with the craziest things every day. Like, you're not even allowed to have, like, a day off. Like, you think about,
And you can't change your opinion. Like Jay-Z said, to be Bobby then, you got to be Bobby now, So if you put this out there...
That's stupid, though.
Yeah, that's what they do.
I know, I'm with you. I'm with you, but that's just... Like, everybody should be allowed to change their mind. Like, I said this morning, like, what's the point of growth and evolution if we're not going to acknowledge people's growth and evolution? Might as well just throw those words away. Like, clearly those words don't even exist anymore,
People like for that to exist for them. They don't want to extend it to other people.
Absolutely, which makes zero sense whatsoever. That's what we all want, right? We want everybody to grow as a culture. Like, we want the culture to move forward, you know what I'm saying? We want people to be more progressive in their thoughts, We want everybody to have empathy for people who are not like them. Everybody that has these differences, we want to be able to share spaces with them. But it's like, when you see that happen, can you really punish Kevin Hart for how he thought 10 years ago? You know what I'm saying? Like, especially when he acknowledged that he was wrong years ago. Like, what sense does it make to punish him now in 2018, 2019? Like, especially when we see the growth, when we see the evolution, when he's acknowledged the error in his ways. Like, how many times do you have to keep paying for the same mistakes?
It's tough, man, in this age of social media, and just like you were talking about healing, what we've done at BTST, not only did we get the books and want to have this conversation, we've also used the books in a bigger way. So at our offices this week, we have at all the different locations, we've hosted anxiety groups for our clients, and we use the book to engage them in the conversation. I did that with the Mayor's Office of African American Engagement. We went to the Department of Juvenile Services for youth that are being incarcerated or facing sentencing, and we started talking to them about mental health and using the book to engage them, talking about the anxieties of just being locked up, wondering what's going to happen, is a fight going to break out? But not only did we do it from a client perspective, so that we can begin to treat and provide better services to the individuals that are impacting anxiety, we hosted a training for our staff that Jada did, where we used a book and we talked about anxiety. I want to show you a little quick clip from this week.
And we're going to talk about anxiety disorder. You guys all have a copy of his book, and it is primarily through the perspective of a client. And when I was reading it, I felt it was so interesting because, a lot of times when we're in session, we know what we're doing clinically, but we never really know what's going through a client's mind because you only know what they tell you. And so to hear from someone all of the things that they were thinking about in session and in life and how it applied to them, I just found that so interesting. So with clients, we always want to kind of research the origin. And as we talked about before with the ACE study, the Adverse Childhood Experience Study, they found that people who experience trauma in childhood or live in a dysfunctional environment in childhood or unstable environment in childhood are more likely to develop a mental health diagnosis or physical health diagnosis in adulthood. And so all of these factors are biological, systemic, historical factors. I want you guys to start thinking of clients and people as holistic beings. We want to treat the whole person and not just that little box 45 minutes a day.
Thank you.
So that's crazy, because I always say I'm not an expert at anything. Like, I'm just a person who has some experiences, so I'm sharing my experiences. And that's why I think it's so important and imperative that people share their experiences, you know what I'm saying? That's why I say, sometimes God allows things to happen to you, so he can work through you, because you're teaching the class based off just my experiences.
Yes.
Like, that's what's needed.
Well, we really appreciate the work that you do and sharing it and becoming vulnerable about that to advance the conversation, to making it cool, to make it acceptable. So I really appreciate the time that we were able to have up here, but I don't want to consume the time just with Jada and I questions, because we had people that bought tickets that wanted to come to see you, and we want to be able to answer a few of those questions. So Dr. Boyer, you have some questions over there for us?
I do.
This is our beautiful and wonderful medical director, Dr. Jada Boyer Patrick, by the way.
Hey, Dr. Boyer.
Alrighty. We've had a number of questions come in, and some of them, we've picked a few. All right, Mr. Tha God, here's one. How do
Hey, Sean, they said that your microphone is going out a little bit because you're blocking the antenna at the bottom.
I'm holding it like a rapper? Like this?
Yeah, you're good now. Yeah.
Okay.
How do you tell a friend that they may need therapy without offending them? You don't want them to be offended like you're calling them crazy, but they need real help.
Well, I think sometimes, you got to show and prove through actions and deeds, not words and lip service. I think the easiest way to tell somebody about therapy is to let them see how it's working for you. Like I'm not going to recommend something to somebody that I haven't done myself. The only reason I'm able to recommend therapy to other people is because I actually go to therapy. Like I can see the benefits of therapy, and then maybe they can see the benefits of therapy just through me. Maybe they can see, the growth or the evolution or the change. So I think the best way to tell them to go is to go yourself. Because why would I take recommendations about therapy from you if you've never been?
Thank you, Dr. Boyer. We got another one?
Oh, yes, we do. As a teacher here in Baltimore, I contend with the trauma and sometimes mental illness of young people every day. As a father of young daughters, how do you encourage and guide them to valuing and embracing mental health and wellness?
Well, I haven't had those conversations with my daughter yet, but when she asks me where I'm going, I do say I'm going to therapy. And the way I want to position it in her mind is it's just like me and your mom leaving to go to the gym. Like when you go to the gym because you're trying to stay in physical shape. To me, you go to therapy because you're trying to stay in mental shape. If you want to be in the best shape possibly mentally, you want to be in the best shape possible from a mental standpoint. And I just think that it would be great for her. I don't know how early is too early for her to start going, but I know if she ever feels like she wants to have more in-depth conversations with somebody other than her parents, I would have no problem with her going, especially when she starts to get in her teenage years. I think that could benefit her greatly. Because I wish I had started going early on, because I wouldn't be in my therapist's office now trying to unpack 40 years of baggage. I tell people therapy is like you go into your closet and you got mad clothes everywhere. You got sneakers all over the place. So then you start packing up all the things that you don't need, and you give those to Goodwill, and the things you want to keep, you hang up and you fold nice and neat, and then you got room to bring in new stuff. So imagine having 40 years of clothes as opposed to only having 10, 11, or 12. You're always keeping things organized.
And you're trying to unload it in 45 minutes to an hour, which goes by fast.
Man, that's why I'm sitting up here confused now. I'm serious. I left my therapist yesterday. By 6 o'clock, I'm on the phone streaming about something with one of my coworkers. God dang it, I need to go right back. I need to go right back.
It never lasts long enough. As soon as you get to the good part, man, it's almost over.
In therapy, we always say we want progress, not perfection.
True. I think it's very important also that you said, when is it too early? And I think that very much depends on what happens in your life. If the trauma happens in your life at a young age, you need to be in therapy at a young age. I have 4- and 5-year-old patients. I don't want to have 4- and 5-year-old patients. But if you don't deal with the stuff that's going on when they're 4 and 5, you're going to have a whole lot of stuff to deal with when you're 40. And I think that's the whole point. If you happen to be born in a home where everything is peachy keen and wonderful and nothing has ever happened to you, you may not need therapy. But that's not the black world. That's not real world.
She's so right. Because I think about it. My daughter's 10. By the time I was 10, I already had my first panic attack. That was when Hurricane Hugo happened, which is a Category 5 hurricane. I was getting touched on when I was 8 by my cousin's ex-wife, who Only reason I made her stop because she got a Jerry curl and I didn't like the smell of it.
Not Charlamagne.
I'm serious. Like, in my mind, that's what I was thinking. I'm like, I don't like the smell of her Jerry curl. Like, I'm serious. I see straight out. And by the way, every time I see Jerry curls, I think about it. I see Coming to America, I think about her. I see Straight Outta Compton, I think about her. I'm dead serious.
But no, those are real. That is a real traumatic experience.
That's a trigger.
Yeah. So by 10, I had already went through things, you know. But to me, that was just normal. Like growing up poor in a single wide trailer in Moncks Corner, South Carolina, on a dirt road. That's just normal to me. You know what I mean? Seeing crackheads and stuff like that, that was just normal. Like my father, seeing him sleep at his bed with a gun, that was normal. Like seeing him and my mom even have altercations, like that was normal.
Every day.
You know?
So Dr. Boyer, I know I'm getting the sign to wrap it up, but I've got a question for you. For individuals who may be experiencing anxiety, maybe dealt with trauma, PTSD, I know that they can go to therapy and there are other services available, but sometimes therapy alone isn't enough. What are some of the ways that you've, as our medical director, used to treat and further assist anxiety?
Well, I think it starts with therapy. The wonderful thing about it is that everyone who comes into mental health treatment doesn't need to see a psychiatrist. However, what I try to think about it is this. All of us are on a scale of 1 to 10. All of us have mental health issues of some kind. If you're on that 1 to 5 and you can function, you can go to school, you can go to work, you can parent, and you can do all of that with your anxiety or depression or whatever it is you're dealing with, then you're okay. But when you hit 6, 7, 8, 9, and it begins to impact your social life, home life, school life, work life, that's when you better get some help. So when you come in to see the therapist, and that's your first entry, you think of me as the torpedo. You might need a bullet.
I'll use that on Monday, by the way, all right?
Use that.
The torpedo.
The torpedo. So if you come into therapy and the therapist is working with you, and in spite of all of the coping skills that they're teaching you, and you're using those coping skills, you still are struggling and you're on that 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, then they're going to say you need to see Dr. Boyer. And Dr. Boyer then will do a psychiatric evaluation and determine, do you need medication? Now, I'm going to tell you something. We have a lot of distress. We have a lot of distress.
Absolutely.
We have a lot of distress. However, you're going to have to trust somebody because there's only like 2 to 3% of African Americans who are your therapist. Even smaller with psychiatrists. Even smaller. And you've got to get past this, and I'm saying this as a minister's daughter. You've got to get past this, take it to the Lord in prayer. You really, really do. That's my burden. You got to do more than take it to the Lord in prayer because the Lord says get help, you need to get help. So I determine if you need medication, and there are some people who do. So if you are on medication, do you need medication for life? Not necessarily. But we got to get you through the hump. We got to get you parenting again. We got to get you working again. We got to get you in school again. We have to get you functioning again. So the medicine is a small piece of it. The biggest part and the hardest part is working on the stuff. Working on the stuff in the suitcase, the baggage.
Thank you, Dr. Boyer.
You know, yes, absolutely right. You know, I sat with Bishop T.D. Jakes on his Bishop Village podcast this week, and he said the same thing. He was like, you know, therapy is needed in the church. He was like, you know, you can't just give your problems to God. You can't just pray things away. And then I said to him, I was like, yo, if I break my arm, I can't hold it up in front of Bishop T.D. Jakes and he pray it to heal, you know? So it's just like, yes.
That was actually one of the questions. You had an interview with Bishop Jakes. Can you elaborate your thoughts about therapy in church and using faith-based organizations as a conduit to healing?
That's a deep one right there. This is the last one, by the way, so we're gonna let you go in on this one.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm a spiritual person. You know, I grew up in Moncks Corner, South Carolina. My mother was a Jehovah's Witness. My father was a witness till he got this fellowship. Then my father started studying the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Nation of Islam. And you know, some of the first books he gave me to read was Message to the Black Man by Elijah Muhammad and the autobiography of Malcolm X. My grandmother was a Baptist, so I've always had a spiritual foundation. I absolutely, positively believe in God, but I also also feel like God puts his hand on certain people in order to assist with our healing. That's why you have doctors. That's why you have dentists. That's why you have therapists. That's why you have dermatologists. And I use all four, you know? So I think that you should have a spiritual foundation, but you know, like I said in that video, sometimes you're gonna pray to God for help, you're gonna pray to God for direction, and God gonna point you in the direction of people who can actually help you right here, right now.
Absolutely. I think more churches are actually starting to understand that. I've participated in several churches that have had mental health conferences because they understand that we have to address the mental health issues.
Absolutely.
And sometimes people go to their pastor over and over and over again. The pastor's like, listen, I can help you spiritually. You got some more other stuff that the professional needs to help. And they'll help them in that way.
So Charlamagne, man, we really appreciate you sharing your story and us getting to know you a little better. But before we leave, we'd be remiss if we did not get to know you in some unorthodox ways, Pause. So I want to ask you.
Grown, man.
I want to ask you a few questions, but we're gonna end this with a little rapid fire, right? So I'm gonna ask you one or the other. Or I'm gonna ask you the first thing that comes to your mind, all right?
Okay.
All right. So I think this may go without saying. Timbs or Nikes?
Timbs.
All right. Uno or spades?
Spades.
Waffle or French toast?
Waffles.
Look at Bryce. That's Jada's son, by the way.
You got height.
Jay-Z or Nas?
Jay-Z.
Fresh Prince or Martin?
Martin.
I'm with you on that one.
And I ain't saying that because I'm in Baltimore. I really feel like Martin. Yeah.
What is your favorite song when you're relaxing?
Favorite song when I'm relaxing? Guy I like.
Yeah. I like it?
Yeah,
oh, that's my jam right there as well.
Yeah.
What's your favorite song when you want to turn up?
Nuck If You Buck, that's a Negro spiritual.
Favorite movie of all times?
Favorite movie of all time? Probably The Lion King.
Okay. And the book that everyone should go purchase to read more about anxiety and to break the stigma related to mental health?
The Bible. I shook one, anxiety playing tricks on me.
Awesome. Charlamagne Tha God, everyone. We want to thank you guys.